Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where today I want to talk a little bit about missing episodes because we had an update from Doctor Who magazine, but I also didn't cover the previous updates from my good friend Tim's Missing Episode podcast. What I wanted to do was kind of like wait until there were a couple of different developments in this story and kind of collate them together, because what I don't want to do is kind of like bombard you guys with information about this stuff and then kind of it seemed like I'm milking the idea of missing episodes coming out. I want to present you with the facts as they are, and I want to highlight the work that Film is Fabulous are doing as well. So we're going to be going over all of that today, so sit back, relax, going to be a bit of a longer one. Subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated, and let's dive right in. So our story starts a couple of weeks ago with, as I said, the Missing Episodes podcast hosted by friend Tim, who I will link in the description below, who interviewed the Film is Fabulous team. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Film is Fabulous are a charity organisation that's job is basically to preserve old film. This is not just Doctor Who, but it can be all sorts of things, television and movies as well. They are not, it's worth saying, collectors themselves. They are people whose job it is to basically liaise with collectors who are trying to basically pass on their films and get them seen, or indeed in many cases collectors who've passed away and their families are trying to get their films catalogued and all this sort of stuff as well. So they are not collectors in and of themselves. They are people who basically liaise with collectors to get this stuff out into the public. And there's a lot that goes into this that I didn't even know, and I suggest you listening to the podcast in full, but there's a lot that goes into the preservation of old film, including, keeping it cool and making sure that if you do release film to the public, that it's all of the highest quality and it's all being scanned and all this kind of stuff. So they do really, really important work, not just for Doctor Who, but for preservation of film in general. So I will also be leaving a link to that charity in the description below. But the first thing that they said that I want to talk about is obviously said on this podcast. So the first one is Franklin, who is a member of the Film is Fabulous team, on the podcast said, "Since 2023, I and a couple of other key members of the Film is Fabulous team have been aware of a large collection of films that have become vulnerable. The collection contains some very important material, including a missing episode of Doctor Who. It is a large collection, and there is a possibility that there are other Doctor Who episodes in that collection, but at this moment, we know of one." He went on to say that the collector very recently died after becoming ill, and while Film is Fabulous received permission to catalogue the collection and bring the items back to a secure facility, the legal situation is ongoing and unchanged after the collector's death. Film is Fabulous will now make an application to the court to continue with the previous agreement. So yeah, that basically confirms that they know of one missing episode of Doctor Who that is in this collection, but of course they need to obtain the legal rights to be able to, release it to the public and stuff like that, because obviously it's still with the collector's estate, and obviously they still need to catalogue it and make sure it's up to quality. But we do know that at least one missing episode is in this collection, which is very, very exciting indeed. But we've had follow-ups in Doctor Who magazine today, so I want to go over that as well. Thanks to Cultbox as well for collating these quotes. Film is Fabulous spokesman Mark Stuckley was interviewed for Doctor Who magazine 623, where he continued to be optimistic on the subject of missing Doctor Who episodes, but urged patience. "We believe that TV shows are made to entertain and be seen. We want them to be seen, but to do that we need to look at the film and look after the film. This can take time. Remember, it has been years since the last discoveries of Missing Who came to light. We need to do this correctly for all concerned, and a few months more is not going to hurt anybody. But I feel, timeline-wise, we will have a very exciting announcement to make in a matter of what could be weeks, rather than months. Rest assured, we're doing all we can to ensure that these finds will get into public domain as quickly as possible, so we can all sit down and enjoy what we thought we had lost forever." He then further elaborated on the need for patience, saying, "It can be a long process from discovery to actually being able to show these films, whether it's a missing Doctor Who episode or something else entirely. Firstly, you need to identify the film, then you need to check the film throughout to see if it's damaged. More concerning are the threats made to the charitable preservationist organisation. All this does is take the time away, sadly. This can lead to some issues where we have received death threats and threats of violence." So this is one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this, is that Film is Fabulous have been receiving overwhelming abuse from certain Doctor Who collectors who are basically demanding the release of things that they either don't have or are not ready to be released. They need to be checked. They need to be agreed with, you know, the estates of these collectors. It isn't just a case that you can just grab these films, chuck them out. You've got to try and like make sure that they're properly preserved, that they've not got any, you know, major flaws in the films themselves, that they can be kept somewhere where they're not going to get damaged before they can be released to the public. There's a lot that goes into this, and by telling people just give us the films or giving them death threats or anything like that, all you're doing is making it harder for us to see these things. This is a charity doing something. These aren't collectors themselves. They're people who are trying to make it so that these films see the next generation. And I think we should bear that in mind. But it's also important to recognize that a lot of collectors themselves have very personal attachments to the films that they've collected over many years. And a lot of family members of sometimes, you know, deceased people who owned these films, you know, they see the films as a part of them and as a part of that person's identity and stuff like that. So it's important to not vilify collectors either and just say, well, you know, that they were just hoarding on to things. In a lot of cases, they might not even know what they had or the rarity of it. They might have just come across it one day and have been keeping it out of a sense of passion for the medium. Like, it's important to recognize that there's nuance to all of this, and I just wanted to kind of highlight that. But the exciting thing they say here, of course, is that there could be an announcement as soon as a few weeks away, which is incredibly exciting. One wonders if they'll have anything to announce for Doctor Who's anniversary this November, because it does seem like the sort of ball has been rolling further and further along recently when it comes to missing episode stuff. Obviously, who knows what episode could be in that missing pile, and potentially any other pile as well. But I'm just really excited that there is progress and that there is a team that are dedicated to finding missing episodes and missing film and television in general. And I think that they are doing something really good. And I think if you can, you know, support them in any way that you can, I would appreciate that. But also just cut them some slack. You know, if you are bombarding them, not saying anyone in these videos are, I hope that all my audience are really nice and stuff. But if you do know anyone who has been like messaging them and hounding them and stuff, give them the time to work. They need to be able to do that so that we can get these films in their full quality back to their proper place and in the public domain for our viewing. That's what we want to happen. That's what we need to happen. And it can only happen if these guys are given the time and resources that they need. So that's why I wanted to make this video. Again, exciting stuff as well, but just bearing that in mind. But thank you all for watching. I learned a lot about the missing episode process and the collection of film throughout this podcast and all the stuff with regards to Film is Fabulous that I've been reading up on. So I'd highly recommend checking out that podcast, like I say, and also donating to Film is Fabulous if you can. I obviously understand that, you know, money is tight and stuff and cost of living crisis is going on, but of course anything that we can do to help is always good. And so I wanted to highlight them today. But thank you all for watching. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.